Usually when we talk about putting in hard work, there's this comforting expectation of a direct reward.
Yeah, a clear payoff.
Exactly. Like, think about building a bookshelf. You measure the wood, you drive in the screws, and at the end of the day, you have a physical piece of furniture standing right there in your living room. You put in the labor, you get the outcome.
It makes complete logical sense. I mean, we're conditioned from a very young age to believe in that linear equation, right? Effort equals a tangible result.
But then, you step onto the bathroom scale after weeks of doing everything quote unquote right. You're counting your calories, you're diligently sweating it out on the treadmill, you're skipping dessert, and nothing.
Yeah, zero movement.
Right. The needle just refuses to move. And suddenly, that comforting linear equation of effort equaling results is completely shattered. It's incredibly frustrating for anyone who's been there.
Oh, absolutely. That is the absolute definition of a metabolic brick wall. That plateau can make you feel like your own biology is actively conspiring against you.
It really does.
But we need to establish a new paradigm right out of the gate for how you view this standstill. Because hitting a plateau is not a failure of your willpower.
Right.
It is not a lack of discipline. What you're experiencing is actually a profound biological mismatch between modern eating frequency and our evolutionary design. And, our goal today is to give you the biological keys to fix that mismatch.
Which is exactly why we're so glad you're joining us for today's deep dive. I'm your host, and we are tackling the deeply misunderstood weight loss plateau.
Yeah.
Our mission is to decode exactly why your body gets stuck.
And it really is a fascinating puzzle.
It is. To do this, we're pulling from a clinical document that details the precise cellular mechanisms of metabolic flexibility and intermittent fasting.
Yeah, this document provides a literal roadmap to what is happening on a microscopic level.
Oh.
We're going to look at the specific enzymes and hormones that dictate whether you store energy or burn it.
So to start, let's look at what actually happens to the food we eat.
Yeah.
Walk me through it. Say I take a bite of a sandwich. What's the immediate biological cascade?
Sure, so let's focus specifically on the carbohydrates in that sandwich. The moment you start chewing, your gastrointestinal tract goes to work breaking those carbs down into simple glucose molecules.
Okay, sugar, basically.
Exactly. And as that glucose floods into your bloodstream, it acts as a signal. Your pancreas detects this rising sugar level and, it sounds an alarm bell.
And the response to that alarm bell is a hormone, right?
Yeah, insulin. Insulin is your body's master metabolic key. Its primary job is to circulate through your system, unlock the doors to your cells, and allow that glucose to enter so it can be converted into immediate energy.
Which the source calls ATP, right?
Yes, in clinical terms, the cells are creating adenosine triphosphate, or ATP. That ATP is the baseline cellular currency your body uses to, keep your heart beating, your lungs breathing, and your brain thinking at this exact moment.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I imagine our bodies only need a finite amount of immediate energy at any given second. Unless you're, sprinting away from a bear while eating that sandwich, you probably have a surplus of glucose floating around.
Yeah.
So what happens to the excess?
Well, your body is an incredibly efficient hoarding machine. It takes that excess glucose and shuttles it away into your muscles and your liver.
Like a backup generator.
Sort of, yeah.
Okay.
It packages the glucose into a dense, tightly bound storage form known as glycogen. Think of your liver as a suitcase. Your body is basically packing away that extra glucose for later.
And based on the source text, that liver suitcase is the real star of the show. It acts as the primary energy reservoir for the brain and the central nervous system.
Exactly. Which brings us to the hidden fat lock. This is the critical mechanism that keeps people trapped on a plateau. As long as your liver have ample stores of glycogen packed away in that suitcase, your body considered itself to be in a fed state.
Meaning the body feels perfectly secure. It's scanning the environment internally and going, hey, we have plenty of energy, no need to panic.
Right. And because it feels secure, your body absolutely refuses to tap into your stored body fat. There's just no biological reason to do so.
Makes sense.
Furthermore, the elevated insulin levels that accompany this fed state actively suppress a very specific, crucial enzyme called hormone-sensitive lipase.
Oh, I want to pause right here because the clinical document puts a massive underline beneath this enzyme, hormone-sensitive lipase, or HSL. Let's dig into the how here. Why is HSL the biological gatekeeper for the listener who just wants to lose a few stubborn pounds?
Well, because without HSL, your body literally cannot access fat. Let's visualize your body fat for a second. It's stored in your adipose tissue in the form of triglycerides.
Okay.
You can picture a triglyceride as 3 fatty acids bound together by a glycerol backbone. and they are way too large to just float out of the fat cell and be used for energy.
Yes.
They're completely trapped.
So how do they get out?
That's where HSL comes in. It acts as a pair of molecular scissors. When it's active, it snips that backbone, freeing the fatty acids so they can enter the bloodstream and actually be burned for fuel.
Oh, wow. So if insulin is elevated, those scissors are essentially confiscated.
The scissors are completely locked away in a drawer. Without hormone-sensitive lipase actively circulating in your system, breaking down fat is biologically impossible.
Wait, really? Biologically impossible?
Literally impossible. You could run on a treadmill for 2 hours, but if your insulin is high and your liver is full of glycogen, you are just burning through the sugar from your last meal. The doors to your fat stores remain bolted shut.
That phrase, biologically impossible, is so heavy. And it brings up something that has confused people for decades. I mean, I know our audience is pretty well versed in nutrition trends, so they're definitely familiar with the old fitness magazine advice to eat 6 small meals a day.
Yeah, the grazing method, right.
Yeah, the idea was that grazing keeps your metabolism revved up and prevents you from going into starvation mode. But if insulin locks away our fat stores by suppressing HSL, how does that popular advice hold up to cellular scrutiny?
What's fascinating here is that when we look at the actual cellular biology, the grazing theory collapses entirely. The clinical data ruthlessly debunks it.
Really? Just completely falls apart.
Completely. Eating 6 times a day does not stoke your metabolic fire. Think about the mechanism we just discussed. If you eat a small meal, you trigger an insulin response.
Right, the pancreas sounds the alarm.
Exactly. So if you do that 6 times a day, even with supposedly healthy snacks, you're keeping insulin elevated from the moment you wake up until you go to bed.
Wow. So you're effectively walking up to the door of your fat cells and checking the deadbolt every 2 hours to make sure it stays locked.
That's a perfect way to put it. You're hovering in this very shallow state of metabolism. You burn just enough incoming food to survive the next few hours, and you constantly top up that liver glycogen.
But you never reach the deep stores.
Never. You never allow the biology to flip the switch to access those deep, stubborn fat stores.
It makes total sense when you frame it around how humans evolved. We didn't evolve with pantries or endless conveyor belts of snacks.
No, not at all.
And the clinical text brings up a really interesting point about the vocabulary of metabolism. We hear words like intake, deficit, and regulate all the time. But the mechanism shows that if you constantly maintain your intake by snacking, your body never senses a true energy deficit.
Exactly.
It never gets the signal that it needs to pivot to a backup fuel source.
Because our biology is designed to regulate fuel based on scarcity. When we utilize fasting, when we willfully pause our caloric consumption, we're deliberately changing the regulatory signals.
But I think the big fear people have is that pausing consumption will just crash their metabolism. They worry they'll feel lethargic and their body will try to hoard fat.
Yeah, that's a very common fear. But the clinical data shows the exact opposite. Brief periods of fasting actually trigger a sympathetic nervous system activation.
Oh, like fight or flight.
Kind of, yeah. You get a surge of adrenaline and noradrenaline. Your body is biologically designed to preserve your metabolic rate and actually sharpen your cognitive focus when food is scarce.
That's so counterintuitive, but I guess it makes sense.
Think about it from a survival perspective. If you are hungry, your body does not want you to fall asleep in a cave. It gives you the energy and the mental clarity to go out and hunt or gather.
Here's where it gets really interesting. And I absolutely love how the clinical text frames this concept to make it accessible. They use this incredible analogy that really clicked for me. I want you, the listener, to imagine your body as a highly advanced hybrid vehicle.
It's honestly the perfect way to visualize the transition between fuel sources.
Yeah, so this hybrid vehicle has 2 completely separate internal power sources. First, you have a traditional gasoline tank. This represents your liver glycogen. It's quick to fill up, and the engine uses it for immediate fast power. But the gas tank has a very small, limited capacity.
Right, it's meant for short trips.
Exactly. But located in the trunk of this car, you have this massive, heavy-duty electric battery. This battery represents your stored body fat, your adipose tissue.
And that tissue is specifically designed to store vast amounts of energy for long winters or famines.
Right, so this battery holds an enormous amount of power. It has enough juice to drive the car for hundreds of miles.
But the programming of this hybrid vehicle comes with a catch.
A massive catch. The internal computer is programmed so that it will never, ever turn on the electric battery as long as it detects a single drop of gasoline in the gas tank.
Which brings the grazing problem into sharp focus. If you're pulling the car over every 2 hours to add just a tiny splash of gasoline to the tank, A handful of almonds here, a protein bar there, a sweetened coffee volley. The engine never runs out of gas.
The tank never hits absolute zero, so the computer never flips the switch. You're carrying around this heavy, fully charged electric battery in the trunk, but the car refuses to use it.
And intermittent fasting solves this programming issue. Fasting is the deliberate act of driving the car long enough without stopping for gas. You are forcing the gasoline tank, your liver glycogen, to run completely dry.
So walk me through the cellular events when that tank finally hits zero. What is the physical trigger that flips the switch?
It's a profound hormonal shift. Once the liver registers that glycogen is depleted, your insulin levels plummet to their absolute baseline.
Okay.
And in this pristine, low insulin environment, those molecular scissors we talked about earlier, hormone-sensitive lipase finally activate.
The drawer is unlocked.
Exactly. Your adipose tissue begins releasing those trapped free fatty acids into your bloodstream. They travel straight back to the liver. But here is the critical part.
What does the liver do with them?
The liver takes those fatty acids and converts them into powerful, highly efficient energy molecules called ketones.
And the source mentions a very specific ketone here, beta-hydroxybutyrate. Why does the document highlight that particular molecule? Like, what makes it so special compared to just burning normal glucose?
Well, beta-hydroxybutyrate, or BHB, is a superstar molecule. Think of glucose as regular unleaded gasoline and BHB as premium high-octane rocket fuel.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, BHB yields significantly more cellular energy per molecule than glucose. Furthermore, it easily crosses the blood-brain barrier.
Which explains the focus thing you mentioned earlier.
Precisely. When your brain starts running on BHB, people often report a feeling of intense mental clarity and a complete elimination of brain fog. This transition from burning dietary sugar to burning your own stored fat via ketones is the ultimate plateau-shattering moment. You successfully switched the car over to the electric battery.
I love that visualization. It takes invisible biology and makes it something you can practically see. But, understanding the why and the what is really only half the battle.
Oh, for sure. Application is everything.
Right, because, I love the theory, but I am the person staring at the ceiling at 11 p.m. thinking about the leftover pasta in the fridge. How do we actually apply this without losing our minds?
Well, luckily, the source material provides an actionable toolkit.
Yes, these are 3 elite, zero-cost behavioral protocols that anyone can deploy within the next 24 hours.
Right, because knowledge requires application to become useful. So let's detail the protocols.
Okay, protocol 1 is the circadian synchronized fasting window. We know we need to fast to empty the gas tank, but timing seems to be everything. Can I just, skip breakfast sometimes and skip dinner other times?
Actually, no. Randomly skipping meals can disrupt your hormonal balance and increase stress on the body. To optimize the fat-burning response, you really want to align your fasting window with your natural circadian rhythm.
So what does the text recommend?
The clinical text heavily recommends a 16-8 protocol. That means fasting for a continuous 16 hours and consuming all your necessary calories within an 8-hour window.
Okay, so a practical example would be eating your first meal at 10 a.m. and finishing your last bite of food by 6 p.m. But why does aligning it with daylight matter so much?
Because humans are diurnal creatures. Our biology is deeply tied to the sun. Aligning your food consumption with daylight hours maximizes your cellular insulin sensitivity.
Interesting.
Yeah. When the sun is up, your body processes glucose highly efficiently. But more importantly, stopping your intake at 6 p.m. guarantees a deep, uninterrupted 16-hour stretch overnight.
Right, while you're sleeping.
Exactly. That overnight period is when you're sleeping, not consuming anything, and allowing your liver glycogen to slowly hit rock bottom. That is when the deep ketone production ramps up.
Which perfectly transitions into protocol 2, the fasted morning thermogenesis. So we have this golden window of opportunity early in the morning, right when we woke up, right? We've been fasting all night. How do we capitalize on that state to accelerate the fat burning?
The routine outlined in the text is actually highly specific. When you wake up, before you consume a single calorie, meaning no milk in your coffee, no caloric sweeteners, you drink a large glass of filtered water mixed with a pinch of high-quality sea salt.
Wait, why the salt? I think most people associate salt with bloating or high blood pressure, not weight loss.
It sounds weird, but when you keep insulin low during a fast, your kidneys naturally excrete sodium and water.
Oh, so you're losing electrolytes.
Rapidly losing them, yes. A pinch of high-quality sea salt replenishes your sodium and magnesium levels. This ensures your nervous system fires correctly and prevents that dizzy, weak feeling people sometimes get when fasting.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And then what?
Immediately following that hydration, you engage in 30 to 45 minutes of low-intensity Zone 2 cardiovascular movement. Think of a brisk walk or a light cycle ride.
Now, if we connect this to the bigger picture, why is Zone 2 cardio so uniquely effective in this specific morning window compared to, say, eating the gym hard after lunch?
Because you are demanding energy from your muscle tissue at the exact moment your insulin is at its absolute lowest and your liver suitcase is functionally empty. Right? With no incoming food from breakfast to rely on, your body has no alternative options. It must rapidly mobilize that stubborn adipose tissue to fuel the movement. You are essentially pouring gasoline on the fat-burning fire right before you finally break your fast at 10 a.m.
That is brilliant timing. You're catching the body when it is perfectly primed to use the electric battery. But, the source text makes it very clear that the success of your morning actually depends entirely on what you did the night before.
Yes, it does.
Which brings us to Protocol 3, the carbohydrate sunset rule.
This is perhaps the most frequently violated rule of modern metabolic health. If you want to wake up and enter a deep fat-burning state the next morning, you absolutely must prevent a massive overnight glycogen stockpile.
And how do we do that?
You achieve this by eliminating all dense carbohydrates at least 3 hours before you plan to go to sleep.
Man, why are late-night carbs so detrimental? So many people use a bowl of cereal or some crackers as a way to wind down before bed.
I know, it's a common habit, but consuming large amounts of carbohydrates late at night does two devastating things to your resting physiology. First, the intense digestive process elevates your core body temperature, which actually needs to drop for you to enter deep sleep.
Right, you need to cool down to sleep well.
Exactly. And second, and more importantly for our topic, it spikes your insulin right at the precise moment you are meant to be resting.
And as we established earlier, elevated insulin means the HSL scissors are confiscated.
Yes, but the nighttime impact goes even deeper than that. Spiking your insulin before bed actively blunts the nocturnal release of human growth hormone, or HGH.
Now, I've heard of HGH in the context of, bodybuilding. But what does it do for the average person who's just trying to break a plateau?
HGH is an incredibly powerful restorative hormone. It oversees deep cellular repair, anti-aging processes, and massive fat metabolism while you sleep.
Wow.
And it naturally peaks during your deepest sleep cycles. By eating late carbohydrates, the resulting insulin spike completely overrides and shuts down that overnight HGH release. It basically halts overnight fat oxidation in its tracks.
So you wake up with a full gas tank.
Exactly, meaning your entire morning fast is just spent slowly burning off last night's snack instead of tapping into your stored body fat.
So the practical fix is making sure your final meal, right before the sunset rule kicks in, around 6 p.m., heavily prioritizes high-quality protein and healthy fats.
Yes, because that stabilizes the blood sugar, prevents the insulin spike, and lets the liver start the depletion process the second your head hits the pillow.
It allows you to transition smoothly into the fasting state rather than fighting a chemical battle against an insulin spike all night long.
Precisely.
So what does this all mean? We have covered a lot of ground today. We looked at ATP, HSL, liver glycogen suitcases, insulin spikes, and circadian rhythms.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. But if you're sitting there right now feeling completely frustrated by a plateau, the absolute biggest takeaway from this deep dive is to let yourself off the hook emotionally. Your plateau isn't a lack of effort. You aren't lazy.
No, you're simply caught in a biological traffic jam. You've been trying to open a locked door without the key.
Right. By pausing your consumption, by embracing that 16-hour fasting window and letting the gas tank run dry, you weren't starving yourself. You are doing something incredibly restorative.
Absolutely.
You are giving your cellular machinery the space it desperately needs to switch gears. You're finally letting the engine tap into those ancient, massive energy reserves, allowing your body to heal and regulate from the inside out. You have to embrace the emptiness because that is where the magic actually happens.
And as we wrap up our analysis of these mechanisms, this raises a really important question for you to ponder on your own.
Oh, what's that?
Well, we just established the biological rule that late-night carbohydrates disrupt your circadian fast and blunt your nocturnal human growth hormone, right?
Right.
But if aligning our eating window with daylight is what maximizes our insulin sensitivity, how might our modern exposure to artificial blue light and midnight screen time be silently tricking our ancient circadian biology?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Is it possible that the glowing screens from our televisions and tablets are keeping our insulin elevated even when our fasting window has already begun?
Oh, man. Is the light from your phone acting like a midnight snack for your hormones? That is a fascinating puzzle to leave you with, and something to seriously think about as you start setting up your new protocols tonight. We want to warmly thank you for joining us on today's deep dive.
It's been great.
Take these clinical insights with you. Align your fasting window with the sun, use that fasted morning thermogenesis, and respect the carbohydrate sunset. It's time to finally stop trying to open that combination lock with the wrong numbers, empty the gas tank, flip the switch to the electric battery, and break through that plateau.